ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Check this out, we got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
How about now? There it is. All right. Let's bring him in. Oh man, I apologize. How are you? All that talk for nothing.
Well, it sounded, great.
Yes. Apologies, PB. I gave you a nice shout out as always. Thank you so much for the repost. I didn't bring you in backstage because something's not bugging me. Something is just amazing, and I've thought of this a lot. It's Re-Entry Monday. We're going to talk about what we saw on the weekend. Really don't want to get too much into the Lane Kiffin thing. That was just so much BS and drama. I feel for the kids, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of our colleagues have said it perfectly. It's the NCAA and their calendar. This could have worked if the calendar was changed, where he would have been able to coach for Mississippi. How far they go in the playoffs, and then just once they lost or they won it all, he just leaves and takes whoever, and the rest is history there. But something's not bugging me. Something is just, I need your expertise and your thoughts. In any sport, 10-point underdogs, 12-point underdogs that win outright happen every day. Now you could say, well, college football, college basketball, NBA, I'm not even going to bring that in, that because I've seen, my thoughts on the NBA right now. But in the NFL, where billion-dollar sportsbooks and resorts are built every Sunday, we just can't wrap our heads around that. Okay, so a perfect example was the Rams 9.5, 10-point favorites at Carolina. Okay, in no way, shape, and form. You think of all the money line parlays, all the teasers, the 6-point, the 9-point, the 5, 10, 20-legged parlays, or the people that just says, all right, I'm going to take the Rams money line with, and then just pick one game, and then do it again, and again, and again. The mind in the NFL. Now, Thursday and Friday, all 4 dogs won, covered, and won outright. Now the Packers, Detroit, that was a pure coin toss, 2.5, 3 points. Kansas City, Dallas, coin flip. Now the intriguing part about Baltimore, Cincinnati was the return of Burrow, but they were 7-point favorites. And then, of course, Philly and the Eagles. And how much have I talked about this Eagles team? I mean, and how much have I talked about this Bears team? The Bears not just cover, they win outright. But how come mentally, and I'm going to use the Rams game as an example, 10-point favorites, we can't say, if you had the cojones to take Carolina plus 10, plus 9.5, God bless you. But I'm telling you, no one was running to the window to sprinkle some money line money. How come in the NFL we can't do that, Scotty?
Well, I think there's a lot of narratives that fans and sports bettors have alike. So, first thing is who the Rams play last week and how they do. Well, they played. I forget who they played, but I can look real fast. They played week 12, right? The Rams played Tampa Bay, and they destroyed Tampa Bay and looked great against Tampa Bay. Now they're going to play another team in the same division who's worse than Tampa Bay, and so theoretically, hey, they're going to go out there and destroy this team. So I think there's a lot of what did you do last week and what did you look like last week and what you see in the NFL, because let's face it, you got the red zone, you got NFL Sunday Ticket, you got all these different things. You can watch every one of these games and you can get a gauge or a feel for what you're witnessing. So I think that's an A. And I think B, and I say this a lot in all sports, just like you mentioned, but I don't think people realize that the Cleveland Browns or the Tennessee Titans, the worst teams in the NFL, would go play Ohio State, for example, and Tennessee and Cleveland would be 2 or 3 touchdown favorites. And I don't think that they understand. So the point being is that every one of these teams in the NFL have the best of the best players in the world. And, obviously some of these teams have won 2 games and lost 13 or whatever the number is, or 11 or whatever it is. They're terrible. But that's because they're playing other teams that are the best in the world. So you've got a lot of different factors, I think, that go into this. And the first factor is that they think that this is Rutgers or somebody, or this is Kennesaw State or whoever. I mean, they're not. They're the best football players in the world. And, what do they say? What is that thing on any given Sunday, right? Or whatever it is. So on any of these occasions, the best players in the world can play like they're the best players in the world. And if the other team, who may be a better team, doesn't necessarily have the same motivation, doesn't have the same drive to do whatever, then those teams can not cover a big spread, or B, even lose outright. And in these particular situations, it's very rare that a home favorite loses like that. Like say Baltimore, right? They lost as a home favorite, as a 7-point favorite, but there were some mitigating circumstances with Joe Burrow. Well, this is fly clear across the country to play in Carolina. You know, there's no juice behind this game. There's no real reason for, and you know, Bryce Young looks terrible. So I don't think there's anything there that, you know, is motivating the Rams to do the things they do. I thought Chris Collinsworth made a great comment the other day, and he was talking about the Broncos, and he was talking about Bo Nix, and he was saying, hey, look, I don't care how many games you win, and it doesn't matter how many games you win. You've got to get your quarterback ready to win the Super Bowl, because you can have the best record, and I'll get into this in just a second, but you can have the best record and still get into the playoffs and lose because you're playing, your quarterback's not good, or he's not ready, or he's not. He said, put him in a lot of testing situations and do this and do that. So I think he can do a lot of those kinds of things. Now, Matthew Stafford's very tested and whatever, so he's won Super Bowls and knows what he's doing, but. So I think to answer your question the best way I know how is you have a lot of recency bias of what you saw last week and what's going on, and then you kind of compare that, and then you think that's going to continue forward, and then I think I think people forget how good these teams really are, and the players on each team really are, and that they can stand out at any given time and beat whoever, and then I guess lastly, one of the things I think that's an important thing to notice is in the NFL specifically, and I do this in baseball, but in the NFL, does it really matter what they did on opening day or the second game of the season currently, right now? Does it matter? Or does it matter more what they've done in the last 4 games and who they played in the last 4 games? Have they grown? Have they changed? Are their dynamics different today than they were on week 1 and week 2? I would say that with Carolina, for example, they're growing as a team. The head coach, the offensive play caller, he's doing some different things that's helping that team win some of these games. And if you're not handicapping, head coaches and offensive coordinators and the differences, which I can get into for tonight's game, I think you're missing a little bit here. So anyway, my opinion, basically, to answer your questions, long story there, but I think it's multifaceted, but it's a lot of people just look at it and go, well, shit, this team's only lost a couple games, and they just beat the division winner or winning team right now in Tampa Bay, and they just throttled them. They're going to go throttle Carolina. And it's no big deal. Just throw it on there.
Well, just in that game alone, I think you got to go back and reel back. Is, in other words, take a look at the Rams' 3-game stretch. Thursday night winner against the 49ers, and then a battle tested at home against Seattle. And then, as you said, they throttled the Bucs. Here's the number 1 seed. Here's Stafford, that's the MVP favorite. Well, Stafford kind of came back down to a little reality with 2 interceptions, 1 pick six, and of course the fumble as they're driving to tie the game up. But as we're wired here, Scotty, for 8 weeks I've said something and no one wants to listen. Now I'm getting all these accolades. Hey, you were right. We are wired. This team sucks. Therefore, they're going to lose. And I'm talking about the Chicago Bears. Now, all of a sudden, the Chicago Bears are the number 1 seed in the NFC, and everyone's going to say, well, of course, Jeff, well, even if they end the season, which they won't, the number 1 seed, they're going to lose early. I get that, okay? But we know in the NFL, it's the quarterback. You need the quarterback. Well, the Patriots had the quarterback last year, and how'd they do? They sucked. Well, guys, listen real hard here, okay? First-year coach Ben Johnson. Second-year quarterback Caleb Williams. A running game. Ben Johnson brought in culture. They're the first. They're number 1 in the NFC. Number 1 right now. Paper champ for now, I get it. But they're also leading their division. The New England Patriots, winners of 8 in a row. They play tonight. They're going to bye next week. First year coach for the Patriots, Vrabel. Second year coach, May. Winners of, I think, 8 in a row. First in the AFC East. First in the AFC. Liam Cohen, first year coach in Jacksonville. All of a sudden, lead their division. Oh, by the way, Canales from the Panthers, which everyone knows sucks. They suck. Oh, really? They have 7 wins this year. So it's the coach. Do you buy in the culture and then you move from there? It's not the quarterback, then find the coach. And we knew Vrabel was going to be successful. And with the Lions leaking a lot of oil, I lived for 2 decades. Was it Belichick or was it Brady? Was it Brady or was it Belichick? It was both of them. My point here very simply is, today, I'll ask you the question. It's got to be asked. Was it Campbell or was it Ben Johnson?
Well, I think the best way to do this is to sit there and go, if you're the head coach, you're not always the guy that's in charge of what plays are being run or what defensive calls are being played or even really who's on your team. So your best quality thing that you can do as a head coach is bring in the best people available to help you. So I think he brings in Ben Johnson. I forget who his defensive coordinator was, but he brings in a good defensive coordinator. So he's got 2 great coordinators because I think they both one of them got head coaching jobs. So he goes and he does that. So I think you can't discredit Ben Johnson for being an offensive coordinator under the head coach. So now what was the value of him? I think it's huge, right? I think the value is huge because I don't think the offensive coordinator, they're not having the same offensive results that they had a year ago. Some of that could be injuries. Some of it can be a lot of other things. They had I forget what his name is, Ragnon or whatever his name is. He was, a Pro Bowl center or whatever for that team for years and years and years, retired, whatever. So, they've had change in personnel, and some of these good teams are going to have that because they keep, salary cap wise, they can't keep some of these guys. So it's not exactly the same group of guys. It's not exactly the same stuff. And here's one thing I will say: I don't think that head coach has grown, meaning that he's going to throw his standard of play out there. And he's going to go for it on 4th and whatever it is, no matter where he's at and no matter what's going on. And I don't think that's always the right decision. I mean, I think, yes, it can be a good choice to motivate your guys and to do this and to do that and show faith in them and all that stuff. But you also have to manage the outcome of a game. So I don't think he's grown in that statute. And to that end, I think some of his choices and decisions this year in particular have hurt that team. Now, that said, you can't, you got to look at what the general manager for the Bears is doing. He's drafting very well. He's bringing in great free agents, and he put a head coach in there that people, A, can gravitate towards, B, he can communicate with the players better. And then I think, the system of play and all that kind of stuff that he's putting together builds that culture that you're talking about. And I think you're seeing a lot of those results. So who do you say is the benefit of what's going on there? Is it the general manager or is it the head coach? Well, I think it's always a combination of a couple things. You got to have certain things. You're never going to win in the NFL without a quarterback. You're just not. So if you can get the kid you drafted to play better, like they are in Chicago, I think that's good. Now, keep in mind, you say he's playing better, but he's still got the worst completion percentage in the league. It's the worst. He's throwing the ball all over the damn place. So he's been curtailed to a point where they put him in a system where he can win. And I think that's where you start looking at what a play caller and a head coach and an offense coordinator means to a team. So I know that we've had a lot of conversation about the Bears and about how good they are, and in this kind of thing. What's kind of cool, and this is an exercise, and I just did it before we got on here. So ESPN, which I don't not a fan of, but they have certain things that are kind of fun. They have a thing. ESPN has a thing. Where is my ESPN thing? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, there it is. So they have it's called an NFL playoff machine. So what you can do is you can pull this thing up and then you can go through the rest of the games for the rest of the weeks, and you can pick the games. Oh, this team's going to win. This team's going to win. This team's going to win. Right. So I kind of did that. I didn't do anything outrageous or crazy or whatever, but so as it sits right now, for example, New England is 10-2, right? Because they haven't played tonight. I've got them going 13-4, right? So whatever. That's conservative. That's not, it's not crazy. And then Buffalo, they're 8-4. 13-4. I don't think they're going to lose these games that they play. They don't play anybody crazy. So then you start doing that, right, all the way through. Well, what's interesting, the way I kind of did this was Jacksonville is 8-4. I got them being 11-6. And then Houston is 7-5. I got them being 10-7. And the Colts are 8-4. I got them being 10-7. Colts don't look good. They got to go play like at San Francisco. They got to go play some of these games that, on the road, they can lose these games. Well, as it turns out, we already talked about Baltimore. I got Baltimore in. So you got New England, Buffalo, Denver, and Kansas City's kind of weird in here. So I gave Kansas City a little bit of credit. So they're 6-6. They don't play a whole lot of tough games. I got them winning them. So say they're 11-6. And then you got Baltimore, Jacksonville, Houston. I got Colts out. Not even in the playoffs. Now, that can change, right? I mean, obviously, different things happen and what I put in there and whatever stuff. So that was I thought interesting that Colts are out. And then when I did it on the other side, I got Philadelphia in. And then I got the Rams, Seattle, and San Francisco in. Green Bay in. I got Detroit in. Detroit is right now 7-5, and I think they'll be 11-6. And I got Tampa Bay winning. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to lose any of these games. They play the easiest schedule in the world coming up. So what does that mean? Well, I got the Bears at 9-3 and ending 11-6, and tiebreaker wise, they don't make the playoffs, Jeff. That's how weird some of this stuff is. The Bears schedule, if the Bears play at the Packers. I think the Packers can win that at home. So I say, okay, Packers win a home game. And then they play the Browns. Okay, they're going to beat the Browns. And then they play the Packers. And I say, okay, well, maybe they split that and go 1-1. Then they play at the 49ers. Okay, well, that's pretty tough. Let's give them the 49ers, right? And then they play the Lions. Well, I gave it to the Lions in this game. Now, maybe you give it to the Bears in this game. It may come down to that last game to figure this out. Because if the Bears win, the Bears are going to be in. If the Bears lose, the Bears aren't even making the playoffs. So these games coming up and the series is coming up in the last, say, 2 or 3 weeks are going to be really important for some of these teams like Green Bay, like Detroit, like Chicago. Those are going to be tough. And in the American in the AFC, I think you're going to run into these games where Colts and Texans and Jaguars. You know, the Jaguars, where is that game? The Jaguars play versus the Colts, then they got the Jets, and then they play at the Broncos, then they play the Colts again. So they play the Colts twice, and then they end with Tennessee. So, you know, they got the Jets and Tennessee, but mixed in there are 2 Colts and Denver. The Colts, they have at the Jaguars, but then they got to go play at the Seahawks, and then they got the 49ers, and then at the versus the Jaguars, and then they end with the Texans. Holy crap. I don't think the Colts make it. That's a gauntlet of teams that they got to play, and all those teams are playing to make it in the playoffs. So I think that puts Houston, and I don't have the remaining schedule on here, but I think Houston, that puts them in a spot where Houston goes and says, I'm going to take that spot. And Indianapolis at not too long ago, everybody thought, well, they could be the number one seed, and they were the greatest team in football. And now, they might not even make the playoffs. So, again, getting back to your original point about a lot of this stuff, the narrative of things is going to change, and injuries are going to make a big factor in some of these things. Like what happens to the Colts if the star running back gets hurt and can't play in these games? What are they going to do? Rely on Danny Dimes to win these games? So I think as you go through some of this stuff and you try to figure out what's going on and what's happening, it's going to be interesting.
It's a popsicle headache. I'm going to do my best to start looking at some futures as in the playoffs, out the playoffs, the plus money, where it lies. As you said, the Bears, the number one seed right now with their schedule coming up. Again, could be outside looking in, and then, of course, will be no one has ever been a number one seed this late in the season and not made the playoffs. And what you brought up about Caleb and his 55% completion rate, what Ben has done basically with that culture and with the thought process, two-headed monster with Swift's and the GM, whoever decided to draft Monagai from the Rutgers, defense playing better. It's just, Caleb, don't make many mistakes. We'll take it from there. And that is, he's made some big plays, whether it's running, whether it's DJ Moore, whether it's a Dunze who had like 2 catches, whatever it is, they're buying in there. And then in the AFC, correct. KC's in that got to win them all mode now. There's a lot of flip-flopping in the South. The AFC, again, I've had the Patriots at 3-4 the whole time. I think they're going to have a tough game tonight. They got the bye next week. Wouldn't be shocked if they lost. I'm waiting for that egg on the face game, looking ahead to the bye, maybe Jackson Dart. But I think if they find a way to really gut out a win, no left tackle, Campbell, no left guard out. So how does the pressure of the Giants come on? Oh, and by the way, the Patriots' next 2 games, they host the Bills, revenge spot there. Then they travel to Baltimore. And lastly, there's an actual playoff game Thursday night in my eyes. Lions host the Cowboys. Whoever loses is out. And Dallas is resurging. They win against Philly. They just beat the Eagles. And now here they are. Again, they could really put a step on the Lions' neck here. 3-point underdogs. Open at 3.5, the Lions did. Now 3. If you sent me 100 to bet on the Lions, I'd send you 200 back and tell you to take the wife back. I have no trust in this Lions team, but we'll wait and see there. Headliner, who's out in the NCAAF Final 12? It's a shit show. Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss. Now they got a new coach in there, and now they're trying to compare Florida State undefeated with the third-string coach. You win or you're out. They're trying to do the same thing to Ole Miss. Supposedly 10 teams, they say, are all set. We're fighting for 2 spots. Well, could be bedlam after Saturday, Scott. Obviously, BYU is now 13.5-point underdogs against Texas Tech. If BYU wins, they're in. And then obviously Texas Tech is still in. And then after that, then there's 1 spot for Miami, Notre Dame, Texas, yada, yada, yada. Thoughts on the carousel of the college football?
Well, I think that, the way I look at it is probably a lot different than, and I don't know. I haven't really followed the show, and I haven't followed I know that I don't remember what the headmaster of that group is called, the committee group master, whatever his name, or whatever but I haven't really followed his comments. So I can tell you this, power rating wise, and looking at say Bill Conley and Jeff Sager and some of these other places that you can get FEI numbers and different things. There's a pretty clear cut 10, 12 teams, and the amazing part of that, if I go to that right now, you would be surprised at what these numbers look like. So Ohio State is number one. That's kind of the consensus everywhere. Ohio State's number one, but like for example, would you believe that Notre Dame's number two? I mean, power ranking wise, Notre Dame is number two. Indiana is number three. So when you start to think about it, what's interesting to me is okay. So say Notre Dame gets in the playoff and they're at 8 or 9 or whatever it is that they do. Well, that's going to match up where they're going to play the number one. Well, in theory, power ranking wise, you're going to have number one against number two right away in the power ranking wise, because Ohio State would play Notre Dame if Notre Dame were to win that game. So I think that's kind of weird, but whatever, it is what it is, right? If you're going to win, you got to beat the good teams. And then you have, so it goes Ohio State, Notre Dame, Indiana. A team we don't really talk a lot about is Oregon. So they got Oregon, Texas Tech, Miami of Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Mississippi, Vanderbilt. That's your top 11. Texas is number 12. So Texas is out, right? So theoretically, they're going to be out anyway, or at least in my mind, they shouldn't be in this group. Vanderbilt's not going to be in there either. So if you start knocking teams out of there, right? Vanderbilt's not going to make it. Texas not going to make it. Well, who is? Well, they got Oklahoma in. And Oklahoma is sitting here at 13 right here on this list. And then, it's either Tulane or North Texas is going to be, and they play each other. North Texas is favored in that game.
2.5.
So yeah, they're favored in that game, but they've also they never played each other before. So yeah, they're like 2.5 favorites. Bill Conley has that game 37-29 North Texas. So not really that close. And Sagren's numbers are 35-26 North Texas. If you look at North Texas, they got blown out by USF. But they've scored almost 50 points in every one of their games. It's an amazing team. So theoretically, I think North Texas is going to be the number 12 guys, and Tulane's going to be the team that's out. And then you kind of look at it and go, well, is really Oklahoma a deserving team? Well, if they're ranked in where they're ranked, they're going to make it in. So I think the teams that I think Notre Dame's going to be in. I think they're a powerhouse, and I think name recognition wise, they're going to be in, and they haven't been blown out in any loss that they've had. Was it 1 point and 1 point somewhere, 1 point and 2 points, something like that. So I don't think their losses are to Miami and Texas A&M. So I don't think that they're going to be on the out. Like Texas, they lost to Florida or somebody. So look, if you're going to lose to Florida, and you're going to be ranked against a Notre Dame who lost to the Miami and the other. Well, Miami beat the crap out of Florida, and Texas A&M is one of the best teams in the country. So I think and Texas beat Texas A&M. So I think you sit there and go, well, it's kind of if this, but I still think that Notre Dame is a better team than Texas. So when I look at it, I just kind of go, well, it's kind of cut and dry, but it's not going to be. We're going to see what happens. And then after this weekend, it's going to shake up a little bit more in a sense that what happens with Georgia and Alabama. What if Georgia beats Alabama? Is Alabama in? I don't think Alabama gets in if Georgia beats Alabama. So that would be 3 losses for Alabama, right? So what happens to them? I think if Alabama beats Georgia, Georgia's going to be number 3 or something like that. coming into this, I don't think they're going to drop all the way out. So I think they can survive. I don't know. I think it's going to be weird how it kind of shakes out and where it goes. But I do think, certain teams are on the outside looking in, and I don't know what kind of help they really need to get in. I really don't. If BYU were to win that game, that's going to take up one of those spots, and that really hurts those other teams. But Texas Tech played BYU. Texas Tech beat BYU 29-7. They had 368 yards to 263 yards. BYU was -2 in turnovers. They dominated the game. The key moments of the game, Texas Tech got the good things happening. Like they punted, and BYU. I looked at the game, and they muffed the punt, and they got into game for a touchdown. I mean, that's how you start to get margin and you do different things. But that was at Texas Tech. This is going to be at a neutral site, which really isn't really that neutral because it's a Jerryland or whatever. So I think BYU's going to be out. I think they're going to lose this game and be out. I think Virginia Duke winners in because the ACC's going to put their team in, and they played already. And I don't know if Virginia beat Duke 34-17, and they had 558 yards of offense against that team, and Duke only had 261 yards of offense. So they totally dominated that game. Not saying it's going to happen again, but I will say Duke's been on the downswing, not the upswing, and I think Virginia will win that game. So say Virginia beats Duke. Well, so Virginia's in, so that's a team that's going to be in, and Duke's going to be out. So I think that just automatically puts some of those teams ahead of some of those other better teams. But if you're going to play in a conference and you're a conference champion, you should probably be in there, and especially of a big school like that or a big conference like that. You just didn't get the Miamis and stuff to play for the final. I'd like to see Miami play Virginia again, see what happens there, because I know Virginia won that game, but very, very close battle, high scoring game. So anyway, here's what it is. I think you're going to see Texas out. And I think that's the one. And if I were doing it, I'd kick Oklahoma out.
Well, the funny is it's a popsicle headache, meaning Texas chose opening day to go to Ohio State versus hosting East Oshkosh. Okay, so they're being penalized for taking on the defending champs, and they lost 14-7 opening day at Columbus. Okay?
Well, I know it was 14-7, but it was really 14-0 until kind of a late touchdown for Texas.
But my point is, if they hosted East Oshkosh as 60-point favorites, we wouldn't be having this discussion because they'd be in. Okay, now you're gonna. I'm hearing the rumblings. Alabama's already beat Georgia at Georgia, but if they lose, now they will have 3 losses. Now they will be penalized for playing in the conference championship. As you said, the ACC, Duke and Virginia, it was a 4-way tie at 6-2. Duke, Georgia Tech, Pitt, and Miami. We all know Miami's the best team in the conference, yet they're outside looking in. Miami already beat Notre Dame opening week. Okay? Again, if Texas Tech does what it's supposed to do, we knock out Utah. Okay? There's 2 spots left. Okay? And technically, everyone's going to, Texas is going to scream if they're out. Oklahoma's going to scream if they're out. If Notre Dame's in and Miami's out, Miami's going to scream because, hey, we beat them opening week. So maybe this will speed up the process to put in, 16, 18, 24 teams next year, and then we'll have the same problem next year because it's just like the March Madness. They're up to 68 teams, and Dickie Vitale on Sunday night at 7 o'clock is bitching and complaining because East Oshkosh at 31-1 is not in because a blue blood at 17 and 14's in.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like the expansion idea, and this is why. Because those teams that didn't get in, they're going to be 10-point underdogs anyway to some of these other teams. So I don't care that they're not in. I really don't care. If you're going to be a 10-point underdog to some of these other teams or a 7-point underdog to some of these other teams, it doesn't, I don't care. I don't mind if you are the ACC champion and you get in and it's a bad year for the ACC and, okay, Virginia gets in, okay, whatever. That's just part of the deal. If I guess if you're sitting here telling me that you have to have the quote highest ranked team in the Division 4, whatever the hell it's called, and you got to put North Texas in there. Okay, put North Texas in there. They're going to be 20-point underdogs to whoever they play. So I don't care about putting that stuff in. If you're telling me, okay, let's get rid of that, let's get rid of some of these, and we're going to take the top 12 teams, then maybe you won't have some of these crazy lines and you won't have some of this stuff that goes on. So I guess the way I think about it is that it is whatever system we have. It's whatever. I will tell you that I think it's probably better than when we had the whatever it was called. I forget when you had the computer rankings pick the top 1 and 2 teams, and those were the 2 teams that played for the national championship, and everybody else was on the outside looking in. So I think that's better. We have better than that. So I think as things kind of go along, we'll see what happens. So for example, like last year, Ohio State, they weren't a champion and they got in as an at-large. But if you remember, they were a favorite in every one of those games. So it's not like so that was a good thing, right? They put a team that was a favorite in because they belonged. So think about it this way: if there's a team that would be a favorite in some of these games that they're going to leave out, well, that's a problem. You know what I mean? You need to put the teams that are going to be favorites as the best teams to playing against the best teams in. So who would that be? Would that be Texas? Would that be Miami? Would that be like if Miami played Texas today, what would the line be? Would Miami be a favorite over Texas? Well, according to Jeff Sagrin, Miami's 91 and Texas, where's Texas? Texas is 87. So Miami would be a 4-point favorite on a neutral field. So if that's the case, then Texas is out. I don't care what Texas says. Miami's the better team. You know what I mean? Like if they made a line and Texas is the favorite, Miami's the favorite, then Texas is out. So, Sarkisian can say whatever he wants to about any of that stuff. So I think that's a good way to look at it. And if you looked at Notre Dame, I told you before, like Sagrin's ratings, Notre Dame's number 2. So there ain't nobody that's going to be an underdog to them except Ohio State would be a favorite. And they would be an underdog to them, but that's it. So I think, they would go in. So Oklahoma.
Scotty, let me interject for a second because I think you said it backwards. Miami's not favored over Texas on a neutral field.
They are, according to Jeff Sagrin.
What'd you say? I thought you said Texas was 87 and Miami was 91.
Miami on Jeff Sagrin's rating is 9102. 9102.
Okay, and then you had Texas 87.
And Texas is 87. So Miami on the rating scale ranks 6th, right behind Texas Tech. And Texas ranks 12th behind Vanderbilt. So if you look at the SEC that's in here, right, you have Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Mississippi, Vanderbilt, and then Texas. They're not even in the top 5 of the SEC. So my opinion is get him the hell out of there, right? I mean, it's not even a conversation. I know there's a lot of people like Texas and they like Manning and they like Sarkisian and they like what is that, burnt orange color, and it's a great fan place and all that stuff.
McConaughey.
Yeah, all of that. But I don't to be honest, they don't deserve to be in ahead of those other teams, because you put a line together, it's not going to be that way. They're not favored in those games. So I think the biggest question in my mind is if Georgia beats Alabama, what happens to Alabama? Do they make the playoff or not? I don't know the answer to that question, because in my mind, if you look at it up here, you've got Miami. They rank 6th at 91.02. Alabama is 90.35, right behind them. So theoretically, then Miami would be a 1-point favorite over Alabama. And if that's truly the case, and Alabama lost to Georgia, they would fall even farther behind, and Miami would be, quote, the better team over Alabama, and I think Alabama would be out. That's the way I would do it. But I don't know. Yeah, obviously, I have no say in any of it. So I don't know how the committee thinks and what their thought processes are and stuff like that, which that's why I was saying I haven't listened to the show. And, I hate those shows. I hate pregame shows, and I hate listening to all the nonsense they talk about. And I think that's a nonsense show to listen to, too. So I just want to see the result at the end and how they voted or whatever, and who's in and who's out. And then I can make numbers and, start betting on shit. So I don't get into all the other theatrics, but I do think there's theatrics that can be fun to talk about, just as we are right now. So I think that, as I look at it, I don't think there's I keep bringing up Texas all the time, but I don't think Texas is in. I think the closest team that could be in would be Miami, in my mind. But that might not be how the committee looks at it.
As we stated, North Texas opened up at 3, now 2.5 at the Circa. Good morning to Mr. Benson and Mr. Stevens. BYU opened 12.5-point underdogs, now 13.5 at the Circa. Here's a surprising one. Georgia, Alabama, I saw yesterday, opened as a pick, which was surprising to me. Now Georgia, too. In my mind, they're looking for Georgia money, and they're getting it. I'm going to reach out to Mr. Benson after this show. Duke and Virginia. Virginia opened at 2.5, now 3. And then the big one, which is meaningless, 1 versus 2, Indiana, Ohio State. I do know Circa opened up Ohio State -6, which I thought was very surprising. Now down to 5.5 there again. Most likely it doesn't matter. It's an exhibition game. One will win, one will lose, and they'll both stay in the top 4 there. Before we head off, there is a football game tonight. My backdrop at New England. Patriots getting ready for a game tonight, then a bye, then the Bills, then at the Ravens. Patriots opened up 7-point favorites with a 46.5. Now 7-point favorites with a 46.5 at Circa. There is a 7.5 at Pinnacle. Scotty, any thoughts on tonight's game?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. I know you're so data numbers and and all this stuff. Obviously, New England's going to have better data numbers than what the Giants have. You start mixing some other components into it, like Jackson Dart's going to play. He hasn't been playing, and they've got some O-line injuries for New England and some other stuff. But I think there's a couple things in play here. So I did a pretty deep dive on this game and tried to do some other stuff. And like I got in a fight. I told you this. I got in a fight with my AI stuff over the Ohio State game, and I was like, there's no, stupid. Like, it keeps telling me to bet Michigan. I'm like, I'm not betting Michigan. This just doesn't make any sense. And it kept giving me all these reasons and all this stuff. So I keep throwing reasons at it to bet New York Giants. Well, there's a lot of things here that I think come back that make sense to me. So you can talk about New England's injuries all you want, but the New York Giants injuries are worse. Their defensive line is just gone. What's his name? The guy they got from the Cowboys. His last name begins with an L. I forget what his name is. But Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence. Problem. What's the other kid's name? Thibodeau. Problem. They're not playing. That's what makes their defensive line at all any good in any way, shape, or form. So if you want to sit there and go, well, offensive line problem for New England, well, they got a problem in the New York Giants, but it's even worse because statistically, where's I think I closed them all out, but statistically, they can't keep up with they got the 31st worst defense in the last 4 games. They're terrible on defense. So I think that's A, right? So I think that solves a little bit of the problem that I was trying to figure out with what's going on. B, is this a game that even matters to New England, to be honest? I mean, if they lose this game, does it mean anything to them? Not really. I mean, they've got a little bit of lead there. They're okay, but I think they want to win this game because it's a home game, it's a national televised game, and I think they want to stay that buffer ahead of Buffalo. I don't know that that's the motivating reason to go out and just dominate this game, because I don't think that's really the case. But I do think you have a situation here where Daboll got fired. You've got Kafka as the head coach. I think that he's been last week. They played a game where they still lost by a touchdown, but they played a game that was kind of good for them. They scored some points, but how did they score those points? How did they move the ball? Well, they did a lot of trick plays and bullshit stuff to excuse my language there, but they to do the stuff to move the football. They didn't line up and run the ball. They didn't line up and and do anything that really exploited the defense. They tricked the defense. Jameis Winston's out there, throwing the ball, doing goofy stuff. And, if you got trick plays and stuff, he might be a great quarterback for that. He's a goofy guy. So I think that puts them in a bad position, because I think there's a lot of unknowns as to what they're doing on their side of the ball. And I don't think you have that at all with New England. I think obviously you've got Vrabel, who's a seasoned veteran, who's a good coach, who has put in if you want to talk about what Ben Johnson has done to the Lions, right, or to the Bears, I think you can say, well, look, he has taken his quarterback and put him at a much different level than where the quarterback is for the Bears. This guy's like an all-pro quarterback right now. He's the real deal quarterback right now, right? They're trying to figure out who they want to run the ball, and they got 2 guys that can. I think they got a good defense. It's not a great defense. It's a good defense. But the Giants got no offense, right? They got wide receivers that are hurt. They got defensive linemen that can't play. The linebackers are hurt. So I think kind of where you start to look at this and you go, well, it all falls apart with the quote narratives of fear because the Giants can cover and win this game is in the idea that Jackson Dart's going to come back and be a savior. Well, Jackson Dart's not a savior. He's a run around guy, but that doesn't make him a savior. And he's not been good as a quarterback, really. And you take away Scatterboo from him, that's not going to be something good for him. And he's got no wide receivers to throw to. I think you sit there and you start looking at it and you go, Kafka against Vrabel. You got May against the quarterback coming back off the disabled list. You've got injuries on the Giants. I'm not buying the theory that the Giants are going to be in a position to do well. I put my money on New England, and I bet New England minus the 7.
And again, I had a lot of people reach out to me last night, and Vegas being Vegas, coy, cute. Kid, come on to the window. Broncos, they're just going to win by a touchdown. And my last colleague that reached out, good friend, what do you think? I was like, it smells, it stinks. I mean, here's I fear teams after a bye week. I don't know what they're going to show you. Are they a little flat? Are they looking ahead? What'd they do in their break? And here, final score 27-26, of course. Washington goes for the 2-pointer and fails there. So now you come into a same situation where when the lines came out and you know, my initial analysis, and I'm talking Westgate Superbook card, we're 3-1 this week. We had Dallas, we had we had the Bears, we had the Texans, egg on our face on the Ravens, of course, and then we had the Giants. And I'm starting to get a little nervous here, as you know. It seems like the Giants are that public trendy dog where yesterday no one was on the Commanders. It was Denver or bust here. So will Vrabel have them focus for that final 60 minutes to say, hey guys, let's go into the bye week winners of now 9 in a row, still on top? Because if they lose this game, they go on a bye, and first game staring at them is Buffalo. So then they could lose that game and be on a 2-game losing streak. Next thing you know, Buffalo's now a half game up. Oh, and by the way, the Patriots then travel to Baltimore, where that's the only game. It'll be interesting to see Buffalo and the Patriots at New England. Will Patriots be 1.5 or will Buffalo be 1.5? And then at the Ravens, the Patriots will be dogs. And then they travel to the Jets, where they'll be at least 7-point favorites there. And then they host the Dolphins. So I've been for a long time. 13-4 is the number that I have for them. But it was with a win here. So it's going to be interesting. Again, there's so much to talk about, so much to grasp in college football. You know, you'll watch the show on Tuesday. They'll give you every scenario for every team. Will Bama be penalized if they lose? Well, if they just beat Georgia, then there's nothing there. If Texas Tech does what they're supposed to, there's nothing there. Unfortunately, Virginia or Duke has to get in. So technically, there's 2 spots there. I think Miami is deserving, but in what world do they want to put 2 ACC teams in? I don't think Texas is deserving, even though I still think on paper that they are one of the better 12 teams. What do they do with Ole Miss with no Lane Kiffin now? And the list is endless. I mean, you can go down 9, 10, 11, 12 or whatever, and, you know, everyone's going to say, see, you should have had at least 16. The more is not the merrier, because we're always going to have these problems, Scott.
Well, not only that, you don't have 16 teams deserving to play for a national championship. That's what you're doing. You know, you're playing for a national championship, so you want the best teams in there. And I guess the people that want the best teams or want like 16 teams or 20 teams in there, the reason that you got to have 16 or 20 teams is because you include the North Texases of the world and shit like that, right? You got to put the best. If you put the best 8 teams or the best 10 teams by power ranking or by the Las Vegas spread numbers and said, hey, who's going to be the favorite? You know, teams. Those are the best teams to put in. Let them just play each other out, right? And then you don't have all this nonsense of all the other stuff that's going on. So, would it matter then if somebody lost 3 games? It wouldn't matter because if they played on a neutral site and they were still the favorite over another team, then they would go in, right? It's like looking at it from this perspective. I think most people would probably say Notre Dame's not the second best team, right? They're not the second best team. And according to power ranking numbers and according to numbers, they are. So if they really are, you know, that's one of the teams we're talking about is kind of on the bubble, right? They're kind of on the bubble. So are they the first team in that's the bubble team, or is that somebody else? Like, what happens if Alabama loses? Are they the first bubble team in, and then Notre Dame's the second bubble team in? And if BYU wins, then there's no room for a Notre Dame. I don't know. I don't know how all this is going to shake out.
The perfect, simplest solution this year, okay? The 2 best teams, and I'm taking power ratings out right now. The 2 best teams in the country all year this year has been Ohio State and Indiana. And now they got to play an exhibition game. One's going to hold the Big Ten trophy. Well, last year, as you said, after Michigan beat Ohio State, Ohio State was still in. They were favored. They opened up their first game 7.5-point favorites against Tennessee. That got bet down to 6. They just mauled everyone. My point, the simplest solution this year, so simple. Ohio State, Indiana, you get a bye. The next 4 teams, the top 4 teams, you decide 3 plays, whatever, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5. The winners, 1 plays Ohio State, 1 plays Indiana, and then that's what the simple solution is. But since it's such a money grab, and everyone's got to get their hands in it, and we got to play till almost the Super Bowl, that's why we need 12. That's why we need 16. Next thing you know, there's going to be 24 teams, and here's what's going to happen. Okay? You're going to have the championship game on Saturday, Super Bowl Sunday. So you're going to get the college championship game on Saturday, and you're going to get the Super Bowl on Sunday on the first weekend of February. That's where this is going, Scotty.
Am I if that were to be truly the case, and people kind of buy into that, which doesn't bother me that much, but if they start buying into that, then I think the other thing you can start talking about is college football is not for college education purposes. It's for making these kids money, and of course the nil thing is all part of that, and everything else. So maybe you sit there and go, well, we're paying, what was that kid for Bryce Underwood or whatever his name is from Michigan? Was he making $3 million this year because they paid him to go over there from, he was going to LSU and then they got him to flip. So I think they paid him like $3 million. I don't know what the number is. So it's something like that. So they pay the kid $3 million to go out there and do whatever. So if you're going to pay these people, $2 million, $3 million a year or whatever it is, well, shit, put them to work. They're working for you as a university, for God's sakes. Put them to work, and if you got to extend out their stuff so you can make more money, hey, go at it or whatever. But stop the fallacy that this is all about getting these kids educated, because it isn't about getting them educated. It's about winning a football game.
Tomorrow, 9:15ish. We're almost in that winter schedule, and again, the dogs are crazy in the morning, so got to put the coats on. It takes a little longer process than just running them out to do their thing, giving them food, and boom, we're on. So 9:15ish, 9:30 at the very latest on Tuesday. Myself and Scotty, Andrew McGinnis will be back around 10:30 to talk some hockey there. Crazy schedule this week. I'm glad everyone made it through Thanksgiving. I hope everyone had a blessed and happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone is grateful what they have, not what they want. Today is December 1st. We flipped the calendar.
We'll start breaking down some games because, the stuff's up. I mean, the game's on paper, the date is there. The stuff I got, the date is there. I just got to start breaking them down, which maybe we'll look at the Friday games tomorrow and then the Saturday games the next day or something.
From myself. Oh, actually, ECSI VIPs, the email's coming. The 2026 renewals will be up. Everyone grandfathered into where they've been, or for the newbies, where you were last year. No hidden costs, no nothing. Just set it and forget it. Text, emails every day, whether we pass or we play. Futures, you name it, every sport covered, everywhere we have an advantage or quote unquote an edge, we ship out or try to ship out. So again, anyone interested or what's this all about, you can send me an email to eastcoastsportsinvestors@gmail.com, or just go on X at EC Sports Invest, send me a DM, say, hey, what's this all about? So from myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one and only Mr. Scotty Webb at Webby20MLB. We wish everyone a blessed day. Enjoy the NFL today. Get out there. We have 23 days till Christmas Eve, 24 till Christmas, and then another week later we flip to 2026. Enjoy yourselves and stay tuned.